Welcome to Off the Shelf with Christine and Katie, where we share with you our recommendations for books to help you find your next read or your TBR to be read list for the future. This month, in honor of a Library Lovers Month, we wanted to share with you some of our recently read personal favorites. Both of us like to read a variety of books, but for today, we're just going to share a little bit of our fiction and nonfiction favorites for your selections. We hope you enjoy these titles and maybe even find a new favorite of your own. All right, so first we thought we would start off with some titles that we both really like.
Yes.
So one of the first ones we have here is The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner.
Now we have bought this stuff before, but we still love it, so we were going to mention it again.
Yes. So this book, the reason I love it personally is it's got a little mixture of history, it's got a little mixture of fantasy, it's got a murder, it's got a mystery.
It really has
so
it all.
much.
It has it all. It's time travel.
Yeah, it goes back and forth between your past, the present, how the past affects what's going on in the present. So it was really a good read. I thought it was well written, but yet not too daunting. So
yes,
it made it
and it is Sarah Penner's first novel, so it's a great, book right out of the gate. So we highly recommend it as one of our favorites. Still, I think even a year later.
I'm hoping to hear like good things from her in her future books. But on a side note, this book is being made into a television series on Fox Network.
Yes.
Do not have a release date yet, but if you've read the book and are interested in the TV series, just keep an eye out for it. I can't wait myself.
Same. I really hope we get more news soon.
Yeah, hope it comes out real soon. The next one we have is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. Again, this is a book we've mentioned previously. Katie, what did you like the most about the book?
I think I liked the most about how you got to see this girl go through time, but basically it's about a girl who can live forever. And she basically creates a deal with the devil. So like we said, she can live forever. And I think I just love seeing her go through different time periods and to her experience life. But there is a catch to her deal. She cannot be remembered by anyone. So even though, yes, she can live forever, she still cannot make an impact on anyone's life. So we see how she interacts with that. And it's just a very interesting story. I don't want to give away 100% spoilers, but we highly recommend it. It's a great story. It's a Faustian story. I remember we talked about it reminds us of The Gift of the Magi. It's a great story. It has that fantasy element, but it's not too much if you're not really into fantasy. But there's a lot to love, and I highly recommend it. And I've heard talks of a movie, so I'm hoping that will come to be. But otherwise, if this is something that's up your alley, like a light fantasy, I would suggest this one.
Yeah, I think it was the Faustian and Gift of Magi elements that really brought it home for me, because I do like classic retellings. So
yes.
And the third book that we both liked
on our
list of double favorites is Magic Lessons by Alice Hoffman. Now, this book is the prequel to Practical Magic, which is an older book.
Yes, but this is her prequel to it that came out last year.
Correct. So she has since written a total of 4 in this series. So she has 2 books that come after Practical Magic. This book comes before. And for me, by far, it's my favorite because it gives the origins of the curse from Maria Owens.
And if you guys are more fan of the aunts than of the sisters, then this is the book for you, because it detailed the aunts' history as well, which I found really fascinating that we never get before.
And it has those fantasy elements without being a true fantasy, so that's kind of nice too. So if you're somebody who likes a little bit of fantasy in your fiction, your realistic fiction, I guess, it's nice. So you have a little bit of a magical element to it without it being pure fantasy.
Yes.
So that was another good one.
All right, and now we're going to go off to Christine's favorites of last year. So these are her recommendations.
So my first recommendation that I read last year that I really, really loved was The Island of Sea Women by Lisa See. This is not a new book. It actually came out in 1920, but kind of got lost in everything else that was going on for a lot of people.
100 years old?
I'm sorry, 2020. My bad. It takes place on the island of Jeju off of South Korea. Starts off right around the end of World War II, goes through the Korean War, and it deals with the, I have this written down, the Haenyeo sea divers. So the society on the island of Jeju is matriarchal. And these sea divers are the women, they go off to earn the living. They go deep diving, find out what they can get in the sea, pearls, fish, albacore, all that
Forks.
kind of stuff. Forks.
Sorry, Little Mermaid.
Little
reference.
Mermaid. And the men stay home and take care of the babies, raise a house, take care of the crops. And it's not until later on when there starts being the conflict between North and South Korea that their society shifts. And there's also the influence of communism, the civil war brewing around within Korea. And it's the story of friendship between these two girls. One's the daughter of a Japanese collaborator during World War II. The other one is her mom is the head of one of these diving clans. And it just takes place over their lifetime and their kids' lifetimes. And I kind of like those epic sagas with a little historic fiction in it. So I really enjoyed it a lot. My next book that I had here was Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey. Now, some people said it's his memoir. Some say it's a how-to self-help book, but he considers it an approach to life book. It was really interesting. He kept journals his entire life, and this book is based off of his journal. So they're his stories. If you get a chance to listen to the audio, he's a fantastic storyteller. And when he's telling stories about his own life, it's even that much more interesting. But I love his little tidbits throughout the entire book. One favorite was that he never pronounces the G in living. It pronounces it living because living is a verb, not a noun. You should be living your life. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
That's cute.
But it's a fun book to read. Some people I know, because it has like little, show you a little bit of it here. There's like little posts and whatnot throughout pages of his journal. And some people found that a little hard to read. So if you're one of those people, definitely get the audio. My next book that I just recently read was The Book Woman of Troublesome Creek, and that is by Kim Michelle Richardson. Now, this is a historical fiction. It talks about the the Kentucky Pack Horse Library Service, and the blue-skinned people of Kentucky. She was a member of the Fugate family, which they had a blood disorder, which caused their skin to have a blue appearance. Needless to say, they were not well accepted. They were considered lower than low. There's elements of the racism that they, as well as some of the Black Americans in the area, were subjected to. At the time. It was really interesting. I learned a lot about what the blood disorder, I'll try to pronounce it, methylhemoglobinemia.
I'll put it up, but
it was fascinating. These people, their health wasn't compromised. They lived to be like 90 years old. She loved sharing her literacy and encouraging the people in the Appalachian Mountains to learn to read, to learn more about the outside world. And that was one of the reasons she was one of the Pack Horse librarians. And that was something a service I never knew about that took place. And my last one is Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. This is a historical fiction. It is Hamnet, not Hamlet. It is about William Shakespeare's son. And for those of you who may or may not know, he died at the age of 11. And this story is kind of like how William Shakespeare was impacted by it, how this affected his writing of the book, of the play Macbeth. It's funny, his name, William, it's Shakespeare, it's never mentioned. You know who he is, but it's not a book about Shakespeare. It is a book about his son and the circumstances going on. It was just a really well-written book.
Nice. Oh, no, that sounds interesting.
Yeah. So those were my other favorites from this past year. I'm gonna let Katie give you her picks now. Okay.
Okay, so these are my favorites from last year over the years that I thought might be of interest. One that I want to recommend that I read last year was The Tenant by Katrin Enberg. It is a Copenhagen murder mystery, and the murder mystery is also very interesting. But to sum up, it's basically a murder that takes place in an apartment building. And the book focuses very much on like the cat and mouse aspect of catching the murder. The murderer actually knows them, they don't know him, so he's having this fun time toying with them. It's a lot of fun, it's very interesting, and it kept me guessing all throughout, so I wanted to put it on this list as some of my favorites. So if you're like murder mysteries,
Mhm.
especially ones that are take place not in this country, this one's the greatest one. She has 4 in this so far, but only 3 have been put in the US. She actually wrote these a long time ago,
Wow.
but they were only recently translated from their original language.
Hmm.
So they're new to us, but she
They're
wrote
not
them a
new.
long time ago. So that's really interesting. But
Import
I love
that,
the
nice.
dynamics between the characters. It's really good. And I'm looking forward to reading the rest of hers. So that's very interesting. I hope they translate more of her books because so far they've only translated 3, but I'm looking forward to reading the rest. And the next one I want to recommend is called Know by Name by Chanel Miller. This is a nonfiction. And while it's a bit of a hard read, if you can get through it, I highly recommend it because the way she wrote her story is very fascinating. But she is a sexual assault survivor, and this is the impact. She tells them the aftermath of her story. She goes into how the court case went through, and she just went through how she felt afterwards, and and her process of getting through that grief and that pain. And I only read it because I heard a lot of great buzz about it, and I was like, even though the subject matter is very harsh, I still wanted to read it. It was very good. And the audio, if you have a chance to listen to it, because she actually narrates her own audiobook,
Nice.
is very fascinating. And obviously, since it's her story, it's great. She goes through it all, and she's just a very good speaker, and she's a very great writer. And I actually hope she goes to write more things because I just think she's a really great writer.
I love when authors
I love that.
narrate their own audiobook because you just get this whole different perspective on it. Yeah.
So it's just not, I highly recommend doing it just for that because you get this whole different perspective of it. So if you can get through it, it's hard, but it's really worth the read. And the next one I recommend is one I've recommended before, but I still continue to love, is 8 Perfect Murders by Peter Swanson. It's obviously a murder mystery and thriller. And basically, in short, it's it's about a book about a bookseller who wrote, when he first worked at the bookstore, a list called 8 Perfect Murders. And now a murderer has found the list, is now recreating murders based on his list. So now he's assisting in the crime to help find it. It's a lot of fun. There's a great twist at the end. I can't recommend it more, but I still love it. So I wanted to put it on this list. So I highly recommend this book. And the next one I recommend is My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. So I wouldn't call this book a dark fiction book, but basically it is about an inappropriate student and teacher relationship. And eventually the teacher gets arrested, and now there's a court case based on his crimes, based on another occurrence with another student at her school. And now the main character of our book has to then go through all these emotions again of being brought up again about her past, and she must now confront it for the first time occurring. And I would say it's definitely a dark read, but a worth read. I don't know go into too much about it, but it's very good. She goes into everything that happened because she feels it was a romance. So in her mind, she's still trying to unravel a lot of those feelings. And like I said, it's dark, but it's just so elegantly written, and it's her first book. So I look forward to seeing more that she writes in the future. But if you're in some of these books, again, I know you have to be in a certain mood for them, but if you can read it, it's very good. I feel like I'm still haunted by this book, and in a good way.
In a good way.
I mean that, like, I will not forget this book. Like, Know My Name, I will not forget this book either. It's one of those things that stick with you. And the next one I recommend is a little bit different. It's called The Shawshank Redemption Revealed: How One Story Keeps the Hope Alive by Mark Dadowitz. Now, this is a nonfiction film history. If you're a fan of Shawshank Redemption, this book is for you. It goes into the history of the film and interviews some past actors from it. It goes through the town that is based in Ohio, and it tells you a lot about the history and how they actually have a lot of sets still in the town itself that you can go visit. And I love this movie. This book came out, I think, in 2020. and it just goes through all the film history and a lot of sites you can still see.
Hmm.
So if you love that, if you love film process, I recommend this for you. And Shawshank Redemption is a great movie. So if you haven't seen it, go see it first and then read this book after. Because if you want more history, there's still a town in Ohio where the prison is located and everything. So it goes through how they acquired all the film sets. So if that's for you, like me, I'm a film buff, it's one of my favorite books.
Sounds good.
And the last one I recommend is one we've talked about before, but I'm going to bring it up again because I just finished it recently. It's called Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Tatsukaze Kawaguchi. I'm so sorry. I can't do the name. I've looked it up. I'm sorry. Bear with us. But it's a fantasy short story novel. And basically the main plot is it's a very short set of short stories where the characters you meet in the cafe, but this cafe has a quirk. You can actually go back in time or in the future only one time to talk to someone who you've been into the cafe with. Each characters bring their own set of stories with it. You see their life, you see their conversations with their partner or whoever before they go back in time to speak to them for either one more time or to fix something that they wish they would have said in the moment, but it doesn't affect anything you do in the present. So that's the choice they have to make. And the choices and the stories are all very great. It's very heartwarming. So if you want a book that feels like a hug, I would, as corny as that sounds, this is that book for you. It's that light read that you need on like a Sunday afternoon when it's raining. This is that book, and I loved every single character. And I rarely rate books 5 stars, but they did it that quickly. It was recommended by a coworker, Ebony, and I gave it a read, and I couldn't put it down. It was that great. So if you ever want to pick up a book that's a light, cozy read, this is the one for you.
This book also came up when we were putting together read-alikes for
Yes.
your most circulated books last year. And it was a title that came up using our novelist database, the Reader's Advisory database. And obviously it was a hit. So it came, people who've read it based off of, some of that recommendations did like it. So that's good to know that it gives you it gives you good titles.
Yes, so I highly recommend it. And if you guys have any wanting recommendations in the future, we'll leave our email address down below. And we also have a form you can fill out on our website in the future for any future book recommendations. And if there's anything you want to see us talk about, feel free to email us to let us know. But otherwise,
so those are our favorites from the past year. We hope you maybe give a couple of them a try. Maybe they'll become one of your favorites. And next month, we're going to be delving into some historical fiction and maybe even having a guest speaker or someone to give us some of their input, some recommendations. They're one of our history buffs here at the library. So until next month, this is Christine and Katie from Off the Shelf. We'll talk to you later.
Take care.
Bye.